Hey guys, so today we are going to talk about CSS versus inline styles, so let's get into it. Now, you may or may not be aware of that there's a little bit of a discussion, and this has mostly to do with another factor that plays into this entire discussion, but basically there is a talk whether or not inline style is better than having styles in a CSS file virtually. And I'm here to kind of squash those rumors and give you my take on the pros and the cons with these two things. Now, first and foremost, you should know that back in the day, before you had CSS style sheets, if you will, we actually did use inline styles quite a bit to do our styling. Virtually all of the styling was happening in inline styles. And then CSS style sheets comes along and you start moving over to that. And now the discussion is virtually whether or not you should go back to do that. And let me explain why people are even talking about this. So there are people out there who will make the very accurate argument that what's good about inline styling is that you can isolate your styles. Basically what it means is that you can be guaranteed that if you set an inline style on an element, that's going to have the highest specificity, which is very, very good if you are putting your HTML in a hostile environment. Let's say that you are developing for whatever, or rather you're putting in some HTML and CSS or styling and so forth. You're putting an element on a page where some genius has created a bunch of styles that mutate, or rather you are afraid that your element is going to be mutated by styles that are in the environment. By using an inline style, you can guarantee yourself that that won't happen. Now, unfortunately, the downside with doing this is that those styles, those inline styles, are now bundled together with your HTML, which means that they are not going to get cached with your style sheets, which is what the browser is, or rather what a CSS style sheet has as a benefit. If you put things in a CSS file, you know that the first time the user loads their style sheets, they're going to have to download them. But the second time, they're going to, for the most part, be in the browser, so you don't have to download them again. Now, as I said, the downside here is that you cannot, as an easy manner, get to a confidence level where you can be absolutely sure that your style sheets or the styles that you have in your style sheets are not going to be mutated by anything. That's a bit of a problem. So but I want to just mention that the reason why this is, I think it's only partly because the specificity issue exists. What happened in more recent time that makes people kind of go back to this idea of inline styles is that thanks to bundlers such as Webpack and so forth, you have communities who are pushing the idea that you should use inline style in your components, such as in React, for example. Because what you can do is that you can actually, basically, since you're building everything with JavaScript, you can actually use everything inline, and then virtually, once it's inline in your JavaScript or in JSX in React land, you can actually cache it as well as with any other JavaScript. Now, the way that I think about this is because I actually did have a look at some metrics and benchmarking and so forth, and all things considered, once the browser has loaded everything into memory, it's kind of, there's really no difference between inlining and having things in a style sheet. Once it's in memory and the browser knows how to run it, the performance is the same. However, if let's say that you're not using React and you're inlining things, the time it takes for the browser to parse the amount of stuff that's on the page is actually a little bit longer. It takes a longer time to convert the HTML and all those inline styles into the DOM, basically, so that the browser can render everything. Now, this may not be much of a performance issue for you, but it is a performance issue. And what I kind of, this is not, of course, the problem, a case for, where if you're using an SPA, if you're using something like React or Angular or anything like that, it doesn't matter because it's all JavaScript. You're already taking the performance hit of not having things in HTML. So you can kind of ignore it. But here I will give you my rule of thumb for these this sort of thing. Usually the way that I like to structure things is that I use inline styles. As I said, if I need to be 100% sure that my styles cannot be mutated in any sort of way, and even then, or maybe if I don't have a style sheet, if I for whatever reason don't have access to the style sheet or anything like that, I'm making a widget, for example, something that people should just be able to put on their page and they don't have to care about it. That's what I usually do. And otherwise I use the CSS file. And the reason why I use the CSS file, and I don't really think that this idea to go into inline style is all that valuable, is because if you use techniques such as you inline the critical rendering CSS, basically what that means is that you put the CSS that is critical for everything that you want the user to see as soon as the page loads, and then you lazy load or you use Webpack or something like the style loader and the CSS loader, you can actually inject all of your styles into the page after it's been loaded, which is it's actually very performant. So I don't really see much of a benefit to inlining absolutely everything. I would say the one benefit that I kind of like about it is that it's very easy for you to kind of see and associate, okay, this is the styles that are together with that element, because when you're looking at a component, it's very nice to just see, oh yeah, okay, these are the styles that are associated with this component. But if you use my way of what I call library-oriented development, where basically you create a folder that holds your component, it holds your CSS and all that stuff, you can still require the style file or the CSS file into your JavaScript file and have it being bundled with the style loader and the CSS loader in Webpack just as anything else. So I'm not really sure that I'm sold that inline styling is a good thing. Honestly, I can kind of take it or leave it. As I said, the only time I really feel that there's a strong use case is if you are afraid that there's going to be a mutation, that you don't have a style sheet or something like that. You really need it. There's a very specific reason why you need to have it as a inline style. Otherwise, I don't really see why it would be your default, because it doesn't bring much else in terms of value. That's at least my take on matters. Have a great day.